Hi everyone, welcome to PMcoding. Today I will show you how to create this color changing and transitioning dots navigation. So let's get started. I've already created most of the markup and styling for this project. I only want to focus on the navigation and I want to keep this video short. I will, however, link the complete code including JavaScript below, so it's accessible to you through my CodePen and also through my GitHub. If you look at the page now, you can see that there is no navigation icon visible. I have already created a div with the ID nav, which will hold the navigation. I've also given it a tab index of 0, so that users can tab over this icon and open the navigation menu. If tab index would be missing, users wouldn't be able to use their keyboard to open the navigation. I will then add 3 further divs to this div, each with the class navline. Each of these will hold 3 of the dots, and each dot will be created by a further div with the class navDot. So there will be 9 in total and 3 next to each other. So that's all the markup I currently need. Let's begin with the styling. I will begin by giving the div with the ID nav a width and a height. For the width, I will specify 32 pixels, and for the height, I will specify 36 pixels. Then, I will also give its children a width and a height. I will begin by giving the navline a width of 100%. I wanted to stretch the complete width of its container. And for the height, I want to give 1/3 of its parent. 36 divided by 3 is 12 pixels. Then I will give the navDot a width of 6 pixels and a height of 6 pixels as well. The reason for this is that I want there to be a little bit of space between each individual dot. To position them, I will use display flex. To the parent, I will apply display inline flex as I want it to be an inline element. This will make it easier for me to position the site title right next to it. And I will also give it a flex direction of column just because I want the lines to stack below each other. Finally, I've also applied justify content. I will apply display flex to navline, and the flex direction will be row in this case, as I want the dots to stack next to each other. Here I have to specify a justify content space between, so that there is space between the dots. I will also give the children a background color black. I have live server enabled for this project, so every time I save the changes, it updates the site. And if we have a look at it now, you can see that the navigation is already visible. There are no dots, but instead there are little squares. And also each line, which has 3 of these squares, is a div with the class navline, and each square itself is a div with the class navDot. I will give border radius 50 to the class nav.dot so that the squares become round. And I also don't want the nav icon to be that close to the edge of the page, so I will give it a margin left of 0.5 rem. If we have a look at it now, it looks more to what we want. Now I will implement the color changes. For that, I will use the pseudo class after. This will allow me to add content right after nav.dot. So I'll just add nav.dot after. And in order for the content to show up, I also need to specify one, and I'll just give it a content of empty string. I will give it a width of 100% and also a height of 100%, which will be the height of each dot. I want to position the content in after relatively to the div with the class nav.dot, so I'll give nav.dot the position relative and the content position absolute. I want the content to appear 0 pixels from the left of the parent, so I will use left 0 to achieve that. I will also give it a background color so that we can see the content in after. And now, if we have a look, you can see that the blue squares cover up the black dots. I will change this to be round as well. So I'll apply a border radius of 50% here too. And now you can see they have changed to dots. Of course, I only want the colors to appear when I hover over this, so I'll implement that next. I will use transform scale to specify the width and the height of the content, so I can give it a value for the x-axis, which is the width, and the value for the y-axis, which is the height, and in this case I'm saying both should be 0%. Then I will also give it a transition, and I'll apply that to transform to make the transition smoother. Once I hover over the navigation icon, I want the dots to grow. So I will use this selector and give it a transform scale value as well. Here I will give it 1 and 1 so that the height and the width grows from 0 to 100% when I hover over the icon. So if we have a look at it, right now it's black, but when I hover over it, it turns blue. Of course, I want each of them to have a different color, so I'll do that next. I've already specified 5 different colors and saved it in a CSS variable just to make it easier. And now I will give each of these divs with the class nav.dot a color class too, which will then determine what color they will turn when I hover over the icon. If we have a look at the final result, you can see that the first row starts with the first color and the dot next to it has the second color, then the third. Then in the second row, we start with the second color, then the third color, and finally the fourth. And in the third row, we start with the third color and then continue like that. So based on this, I will give each div its own color class. I'll begin with the first row right here. And I will give the first dot the color class of C1. Then for the second, I give the color class C2, and for the third dot, I will give the color class C3. Then I'll continue to the next row and begin with the color C2. and then continue with C3, and then C4. And finally, for the last row, I will start off with the C3 color class, and then continue with C4, and finally with C5. Now that that's done, I just need to give the color classes some values. I will remove background color blue from the CSS selector after, as we no longer need that, and instead I will specify the background colors here. So for the C1 color class, I'll just give the background color var C1, and I'll do nearly the same for the other ones. So for the C5, I will give the background color I saved in the variable C5, and so on. If we have a look at the page now, when I hover over it, the dots have different colors. I, however, don't want all of them to change at the same time. I want some to change quicker than the others. So to achieve this, I will use the property transition delay. I will apply a transition delay of 100 milliseconds to the color class C2, and I will give a transition delay of 200 milliseconds to the third one. I want to increase the transition delay by 100 milliseconds. So for the color class C4, I just give 300 milliseconds. And for the last one, I'll just give a transition delay of 400 milliseconds. If we have a look at it now, you can see that the transition comes from the top left and moves to the bottom right. I want this to be slightly quicker, so I will change the transition here to 0.3 seconds. If you have a look again, it's much quicker. So that's pretty much it for this project. I hope you enjoyed it and that it was useful. If you like this video, please subscribe. I also have a similar video which I did last week, so feel free to check it out. I'm also on social media, so feel free to follow me. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and have a great day.